Okay, so he was an Italian architect who brought neoclassicism in a way to Italy. And as such, he's not one of the most interesting architects, but I still think he's worthy of being talked about. This was the man as a young man, and we'll see a picture of him in his older days. Here he is now. You know, he has a medal, so obviously he had success. He became the architect of the papal authority and so on. Yeah, born April 14th in 1762. So he was an Italian architect and designer, urban planner, and archaeologist. This is interesting, and the chief exponent of neoclassicism in Italy. Maybe someone might be interested to explore the relationship between neoclassicism and rationalism or neo-rationalism in Italy, because they, in a strange way, although Italians are Latins, they have a very significant rationalist architecture. And I see a possible connection with neoclassicism. So he was named official Architetto Camerale of the Papal States by Pope Pius VI in 1706, 1786. He taught architecture at the Accademia di San Luca, was a pioneer archaeologist and the restorer of monuments such as the Milvian Bridge and the Arch of Titus in Rome. He retraced the ancient line of the Via Flaminia and restored Giacomo Barozzi da Vignola's neglected church of Sant'Andrea in Via Flaminia, which influenced his own church of Santa Maria della Salute in Fiumicino, the newly established port in Rome. So some drawings by him, self-portrait, I would say, although it is named the portrait of a man, but it's him. And anyway, this architecture at the end of the 18th century, the beginning of the 19th century, is a little bit uninteresting because, I mean, it depends. It depends where, but I never had a great love for this architecture. Although, you know, we look at this drawing and it shows skill, no? He was a skillful practitioner of architecture, and he sketched, you know, with flavor. Here is the leg of a, you know, of a table. The leg itself shows temperament and nerve or verve. Anyway, just a few drawings by him. Also, since we look at drawings, I suggest to you, maybe it's not necessary, but I suggest to you, do not throw away anything that you make. Try to keep all the sketches, even those that you think are not good, or those that the professors or the colleagues tell you that they are not the most inspired, whatever. Keep them, because later on you might look at them differently, if possible. So Villa Pianciani, in Spoleto, a large building. Anyway, there is so much architecture on Earth. You know, we only look at some buildings and some architects, but you know, the human being, the human race, built and built and built and builds and builds and builds, and really, if we go on like this, you know, we might sooner or later cover the whole Earth with a human work. That's exactly why there are you know, voices, so to speak, who claim that we are entering, if we didn't already enter, into the post-Anthropocene age. What is the post-Anthropocene age? Is the age after man. And the Anthropocene has to do with anthropos, with a human being. The post-Anthropocene age is the age when the human being is not any longer in the center. And there are some who think that we already entered into something like this. And it's possible, I mean, more like a wishful thinking, because in fact, I'm sure if the pandemic is defeated, we'll continue our assault on the earth, to build and build and build and build highways, buildings, factories, hotels, the tallest skyscrapers will never stop unless a catastrophe happens. But on the other hand, is the climate change. There is a need to use our resources, the resources of the earth, with more care. So it's a complicated time. By the way of this, I want to tell you that there was an Italian actually living around the time this man lived, Giambattista Vico, an Italian theoretician of culture, who said that there are 4 ages in the evolution of human life. He said the first one was the age of the gods. The age of the gods when the gods were all powerful and the human being was very modest and not developed and weak. Then after the age of the gods followed the age of the heroes, where the humans began to generate heroes. They were not gods, but they were godlike, although they were humans. Then the third age is the age of man. And we live now in the apotheosis of the age of man. Is the age of man. We cover the earth with skyscrapers, with buildings, with highways, with filled with cars running. That it's clear. We put the animals in the zoos, we put the plants in the greenhouses, we consume, and produce. But after the age of man, he thought on the spiral of time, we might go back to where we started from, in this case, to the age of the gods, but going through a fourth period, which is the age of chaos. And it might be that we are somewhere in between the age of man and the age of chaos. Now, I don't know if it will follow, if it will follow again another age of the gods. I don't know, but I see some logic here, and it is bothering that the human being extended itself too much too much, and we have to restrain ourselves. Now, I know I could be ridiculed now and say, wait a minute, you just said, quoted Frank Lloyd Wright, that creativity is exuberance, and on the other hand, you tell us that we have to restrain ourselves. Maybe Lacan and Vassal are the right architects today, because it's a restrained architecture. I think there is a difference between a genuinely being restrained and mimicking being restrained. I'm not sure. I have to study more their work, but I'm not very sure that their modesty is truly very genuine. Because if you deprive architects, I think you can be very modest and also joyous, to have joy. And I don't see joy in their buildings. I don't see it. And you can be very poor, but very joyous. For example, I can give you an example. I once went to Mexico, only once, to Acapulco, and I saw 6 or 8, if not 10, Mexicans in one little Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, it is totally inconceivable that you can have so many people squeezed in such a small car. But they did it, and they sang, and it was a joy to look at it, although it was a lot of discomfort in that Beetle Volkswagen. So what I'm trying to say is, if you are poor, it doesn't mean you have to have grayness and a morose architecture and no joy. You can have color, you can have beautiful accidents, even if you are poor. I don't see a contradiction between poverty and exuberance. Anyway, we are looking here at a big building by this Italian neoclassical architect with many windows and yeah, what can we say? One of these villas. He also designed a famous clock. You are going to see it for San Pietro, and here he has a clock too. I think he liked clocks, and some architects also design watches, like Aldo Rossi. Some architects love design, object design. This is another sketch by him for this very villa. And we see the pinkish color for the facade. I don't know if you know, but for Falling Water, the building by Frank Lloyd Wright, initially he wanted to paint the parapets of the big terraces that the house has in gold. And the client, who was more restrained, told him to calm down, and he settled for kind of a pink, kind of like here. But still, even the pink, I think, is a little bit extravagant. Clocks with mosaic faces on top of the facade, bell towers, Basilica of Saint Peter. Look at this. He loved clocks. What can we say? It's a nice work, but mainly because of the sculptures. I don't know if he did the sculptures as well. Maybe. I like this picture because it's in black and white. Only there is color only inside the the clock. And I guess here is Michelangelo's cupola. Okay, so Villa Torlonia in Rome, 1806 onwards. Neoclassical, all right. I mean, how else could we call this building but neoclassical? And the back facade, the rear facade. There are some influences here coming from the great tradition of Italian architecture, even Palladio, but the architecture is much more rigid and in a way sterile than the one by Palladio. It's not bad, but for my taste, a little cold. This is the side elevation. And a more spectacular picture, maybe treated creatively through Photoshop, maybe. Okay, so now we go. For this one, I couldn't find, or I couldn't understand he did the urban planning with the access to the Imperial Forum in Rome. Now the general plans for Piazza del Popolo. Here is more clear what he did. First plans 1793, final plans 1816, creating its elliptical plan and linking it via stairs and terraces with the Pincio, including the Casina Valadier in the Borghese garden. Anyway, that's how it is now. With you see the elliptical perimeter line of the. It's a famous piazza in Italy, in Rome. And it wasn't always like this, as you can see here. Anyway, he worked also as an urban planner. And actually, it's nice to work in urban, let's call it planning, I think it's nice. I did it and I didn't regret it. It's nice, but it's nice to design anything, a city, an object, a building. Now, this was not his drawing, but this is essentially what he did. It doesn't look like a great, great intervention, but this was before he made the elliptical thing, and I like this plan actually more. I don't know who did this one. To my shame, I even made a presentation about, I'm honest with you now, but maybe I shouldn't be, about the architect who built this church. And now I forgot his name. This one was built after this one, and it's mimicking as being almost identical. But the idea to have two similar churches, one next to the other, I like this duality. Maybe I have another picture with them. Anyway, these obelisks tire me off. I mean, this. What do they mean? These obelisks. Why do we always? I mean, I could become now a psychoanalyst in a Freudian way and comment a little bit about the phallic qualities of this obelisk. Why do we have to plant always in the center an obelisk? There is also at the Place de la Concorde in Paris. There is here, there is in front of San Pietro, always an obelisk. Why? I think it's exactly about what Giambattista Vico said, is the age of man. Man wants to, assert himself. I think I said it correctly, himself everywhere. And the obelisk is a symbol of, possession and power and verticality and so on. Look at it. I mean, really, what is so triumphant about human life that we always have to plan something so obviously phallic in the center of every void? It's really the assault of man over on anything. But these two churches together here are nice, and the fact that there are these avenues, I like this. Teatro Valle, 1819. I couldn't find pictures. Now Fiumicino, the first planned suburb of modern Rome. It's just urban planning, but I couldn't find pictures of sufficiently concise to be shown. Now, a church of Santa Maria della Salute, which he built, and this building, it's almost, yes, it's very literal here and kind of, naive and tiring, placing these columns here, which are actually useless, structurally useless. They only mimic supporting something. They support nothing. But otherwise, the simplicity of the building, this announces the modern architecture. And I'm thinking of the public library by Gunnar Asplund in Stockholm, which kind of has this geometrical arrangement like here, without the mistakes that Giuseppe did here at the front, because I think it is a mistake. This ridiculous mimicking, supporting what, Giuseppe? Why did you do this? Anyway, you see, this is the summum of insincerity. You put the columns which are totally useless. They're just mimicking, supporting that thing above them, which could have stayed nice without any column. But otherwise, the building has some qualities here. I'm surprised he did this. I only hope he didn't, that it wasn't him, it was someone else who did it. Anyway, restoration of the Arch of Titus, including the outer portion of the arch and exterior columns. Now, this is serious business, an arch from the Roman times, to touch it and to restore it and to even add, some columns there. This is the arch before the restoration. And yes, Rome has its glory, had its glory. It was once a great empire, not any longer, but some of these buildings lasted for, now 2000 years. And here it is restored. I don't know exactly what Giuseppe did here, but looks more complete than in this picture. Yes, now the very age of this temple and makes you bow your head in reverence, because yes, it's a 2000 old, 2000 years old structure. I wonder how those Romans were, how, it was just a different kind of a society. It was a monumental architecture, of course. This is just an arch, but you know what is in Rome, in the Forum. all came down. No, as it was said, all empires sooner or later will come down. The American empire will come down as well. What was strange, when I lived in Chicago, I was invited to an exhibition and with some works in the proximity of some, towers, that downtown Chicago. And I wrote then a text which was called The Towers of Power. And I think that's how it was called, where I ended by saying, well, one day these towers will become dust, will come down for one reason, some reason or another. And 2 weeks later, the planes entered World Trade Center and those two towers became dust, so to speak. A strange kind of synchronicity. I have to find that text. I don't know where it is. Now here he did again some urban work, but I couldn't find pictures. But I did find pictures of this church of San Rocco, the facade in Ripetta. He did a facade, and I think, here again, we have the triumphalist columns, which are not structurally speaking required. But here you have an example of an architecture which is representational. It has an emphasis. The rhetorics of the facade are emphasized by the presence of these columns, although the columns are useless, structurally speaking, just like they were in the previous example that we saw. It's not, this facade is more convincing somehow but again, here we have the case of a structure which is ornamental. This is ornamental. And it shows clearly that architecture cannot get rid of the ornament, because you need the representation. You need the aesthetical function of architecture to manifest itself. And he thought that in this way he is serving the symbolic and representational character of the facade. Now, I wouldn't like to be in life just a side elevation, so to speak, because the side elevations are often without glory. It's the typical story. Only the front counts. What is on the side, well, the money was not there any longer. It's just a side elevation, although it is much longer, much bigger than the front elevation. But usually in New York City, many buildings are like this. The front elevation towards the street is more elaborate, richer, and then the side elevation is left to no glory. This also happens in Florence, Palato Rucellai by Alberti. The side elevation is totally without significance. So anyway. Palazzo this was made into a hotel. I don't know if I found pictures of it. Yeah, just this picture. What can we say? It's an urban building, but that's it. And then his own home, but I couldn't find pictures of it. The architect's own home in Rome. And the general plan for the Piazza of St. John Lateran, here also is not very clear what he did. Maybe this part here with these diagonals, maybe. And here you have, here is a little bit confusing because it's just one diagonal. I don't know. I have to investigate further. But this picture is, I don't even know if it's from the same place, but it's in colors, and it invites me to hope again that color is not eliminated from life and architecture like. The Valadier church, this is interesting. It's called the Valadier church. He built it inside the cave. So it's a little church or temple or sanctuary built in, so the octagonal temple of Travertine, Tufa, built right in the cave among the harsh cliffs, combines human skill and the beauty of nature. Valadier Church in the Italian town of Genga is not called a heaven for the soul in vain. The miniature temple over the dome, of which hangs a natural roof of limestone, is removed from human vanity and the blessings of civilization. Maybe blessings should have been placed between quotation marks because it's sarcastic. It seems impossible to think of a better place to move away from everything and think about the eternal. Here it is. Now, was this needed in order to think about the eternal? The grotto, the cave itself would not have been enough. I don't know. So the church in the Marche region and the Adriatic coast of Italy got its name from the surname of the author, meaning the architect, who created its project. Beginning the work in the 20s of the last century, well, now it's not the last. This text was written in the 20th century. So that is in the 19th century. The official architect of the Vatican, Giuseppe Valadier, and about him we talk today, was inspired not only by the amazing beauty of the grotto, inside of which he planned to build a temple, but also by the rich history of this place. So now you see a few pictures of this, kind of strange thing, and I don't know if I'm allow myself to say, but if I build this, I would have made sure that there is a little bit of there was a little bit of space between the top of the dome and the bottom of this the ceiling of the cave. Like this, it seems that this part of the cave is supported by the dome, which is it's almost like saying man is supporting God, and it's kind of presumptuous, I think. Anyway. Otherwise, yes, it's an interesting thing, somehow. But again, I am tempted by devilish Freudian thoughts to say something. Anyway, I better not. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if I'm correct, but sometimes I feel like smiling or even laughing when I contemplate because I actually see the human vanity and the human foolishness. Maybe my own, because the mystics say we do not see things as they are, we see things as we are. So if I see vanity outside of myself, it might be that it's my own projected to whatever is outside. Anyway,